with me on stage talking to you, we're actually going to be wandering on back by the tech table. So gather around back there and we'll begin.
Found out last night this thing's sturdier than we thought, huh?
But we can start in segments and work through it. So if you can't fit up here, just chill for a bit. We'll cycle everyone through. So do you want to do introductions first before we start? I'm Null-Ref. I'm lighting lead. Where did Foxworth go? We should introduce him first. Our AV lead Foxworth is hiding, but he is the one who coordinates all of this and makes it happen. Oh, cool. Can I talk about it? Okay. So this is Larsis, our audio lead. Yep. And then we also have, is Kay backstage? All right, Kay is also backstage. You'll get to meet him later. Does anyone else want to do a quick introduction of themselves? This is Rex, my lighting second.
Hi. I'm Zach.
This is Zach. Zach does Zach things.
Nice to meet you, Zach. I'm Guillaume.
Yep, Guillaume. Anyone else around here that I'm missing? Okay, well, you'll meet more people. Oh yeah, Antwell, doing camera things. Woo. Okay, so, first off, if anyone has any questions, just let us know. We'll answer them as we go. Do we want to start with audio? Do you want to just give us a brief rundown of what is going on here? This is complicated.
This is the Yamaha CL5. The board looks scarier than it is. It's just very large, right? But at the end of the day, all audio boards work the same. That's controlling our mains. That's what we call the speakers that you see hanging there. That's main PA. On the floor, we got our subwoofers, and those two on top of the subwoofers that I'm going to ask you not to step on, those ones are our center fills. And so what we do is we assemble it in a way that it's going to sound pleasing to the ear just as is, and that way all we have to do is do a final tune on the system to refine that sound in to make it sound as clean and clear as possible. That whole process starts, what would you say, about 3 to 5 months in advance, where we figure out what our room is, how big that room is going to be, and figure out placement. And we have to coordinate a lot with different departments there because my speakers can't be in the way of Null's lighting, and none of it can be in the way of the video rig. So this console here is the one we spec for the show. It's one of the larger ones on the market, and it's interesting. In a lot of ways, it sounds like an analog console, which is a very clean, clear sound with a warm tone. And it uses a technology called Dante. If you look at the back of the console, there's about 4 or 5 cables plugged into the whole thing, because everything on this particular one is controlled over networking. And later on in the program here, I can go ahead and give you a rundown of how we build and set this thing up, and I can actually go into a bass scene and show you how we would start from scratch.
Hey Lars, why are the speakers so weird shaped? They're wedges, not like the normal speakers I have at home.
Yeah, Lars, why are they so weird looking?
Line arrays now, huh?
Well, these are what are called line arrays, and the reason why we do those is we stack different speakers on top of each other to increase the overall volume of output. That's why they can be a lot louder than your speakers at home. On top of that, the ones on the front of the stage facing inward are called wedges. They're designed to be able to sit on their backside basically and point towards the performers or point towards the audience depending on how we set them up. Different speakers are used for different applications. For example, we have line arrays here. There's another option called point source. Those are ones where it looks like a big box. They actually look fairly boring in person, but the thing is that a good point source speaker can actually outperform a line array of up to 18 speakers, which is insane. And they can hit, what, about 134 decibels or something like that?
Something like that.
Which is about the same sound as a 747 taking off from about 10 feet. So they can get insanely loud. And then you have your final one, which is a ground stack speaker. Those are those ones that you saw from like the 80s, where they're sitting on top of the subs, and they're just big speakers with the tweeters on top.
Wonderful. Does anyone have any questions about what was said right now? We'll tour around, take a closer look at all the equipment, and get backstage and all things. Anyone have questions yet? Nope? Wonderful. So let's move on to lighting, which is my specialty.
You want to sit or?
Yeah. Well, no, I can
Clear
stand
comp
here. So this is the lighting console that we have here. This is a system called Magic Q, and It's what's used to turn the lights on the stage. You can see I can wiggle these faders and lights come on. If anyone wants to come up and push buttons, you're welcome to. We try to have more open during the dances so people can come by, maybe hit a few buttons, try it out. Once we sort of break out into groups and start wandering around the room, people are welcome to play with it. Different styles of lighting. We have theatrical lighting, so you'll see those two towers on either side have a bunch of what are called ellipsoidals. Some of those are pointed at the stage, some of them are pointed at like the banners that you see on the stage, and then we have one that's projecting all those parts on the wall. They're sort of a multi-purpose light that you can use for a lot of different things. On the stage itself, you'll see we have a bunch of lights or car cams shining down on it as well to sort of light up the stage. Lighting up the stage is important. That's what we yeah. Yeah. In addition to that, we have a lot more sort of utility/dance lighting. You can see this pattern I have going on here. POWWAHHH design because it does something very cool. The reason we have a lattice system here is because you can have hearts on it. Because the theme this year is love. Yeah. And as you may have seen there, it's doing a different pattern than it was doing before. We can program different buttons to do different things. This is lighting, the way I like to describe it, is the ultimate rhythm game. You basically got music and you're just mashing buttons in time with it. Except this thing, you can tell it to do whatever you want. Specifically, what it does is it gives you basically a list of lights that you have here. And then you can say, I want these lights to do these specific things and say it to what's called a cue, which is one of these. And when you press that button, it does the thing you told it to do. And you can get really complicated with that. So it's sort of building your own instrument to play along with the music as you're going.
Hey, Noel,
Yeah,
make the POWWAHHH sign do something.
I can. So you may have noticed we've got a little POWWAHHH sign up there. We originally hung that up and I was going to have it controllable, but we couldn't figure out what channels it was being controlled on, so we just kind of left it there. You'll see it randomly turn on from time to time.
That's why we hate nip switches.
Yeah, if anyone want to try to figure out which light it's actually tied into, go ahead, we would love to hear. Okay, any questions so far about lighting? I'll explain more as we wander around.
Are these lights synchronized to, if a DJ is playing their BPM setups to synchronize?
Yeah, so the question is, are these lights synchronized to the music or to the BPM? The answer is right now, we do what's called tap to tempo. In other words, you tap that button in time with the music and it'll automatically sync the lights with whatever beat you tap in. This software does have an option to take an audio input from the console and turn that into either like BPM sync, or you can even do like audio visualizers on like the lights that you have here. We've done that at some cons like BLFC where you would see like the lights going up and down in time with the music. Yeah. Any other questions so far?
What would you say is the ratio to pre-programmed inputs versus pressing the buttons manually during a show?
So the question is, what's the ratio between pre-programmed inputs versus pressing the buttons manually? So my personal style of lighting that I like doing is called busking, which is very much playing along with the music. We do a lot of pre-programming on here, but a lot of it is just purely setting up so that when I hit a button, something happens, versus the other type of lighting, which is called time code, which essentially means that you pre-program the entire light show, or at least a large portion of it, so that you can just sort of hit play when the music starts and it'll just go along with it. That takes a lot more effort. We don't do that here because we don't have the time for it.
It's worth noting that we don't know what the DJs are going to play beforehand. They might change their mind in the middle of the set. They might do something. So kind of going back to the ultimate rhythm game analogy, what we're really trying to do is like guess when the drops are going to be, guess when the DJ is going to do stuff, like know when a build-up's happening and then try and time our lights accordingly.
And this actually brings up a good point on what Noel was talking about, a time-coded show. A lot of the large music festivals that you'll see are time-coded, which means that a few days or up to a month before the show, the DJ will actually pre-record their set. They'll work with the lighting engineer, and everything will be synchronized with each other with an LD there in case they need to go outside of that time code.
Yep, and that's specifically for dance lighting. If we're doing a more theatrical show like opening ceremonies, some of you might see, you'll see I have a bunch of notes like scribbled on here what we should be doing. That is not time coded, but we have sort of what's called a cue to queue, where we have a series of cues that we need to execute at specific timings, and then you just do it. But that doesn't always go to plan. If you were during opening ceremonies, I totally missed a blackout during one of the things, but not super noticeable. That's the thing you'll realize about working in theater tech, is that if you do it long enough, you'll realize you make tons and tons of mistakes and you beat yourself up over it, but no one in the audience is probably going to notice that you did something wrong. And especially like when you're running like dance lighting, you will make mistakes, you will misinterpret what the song is going to do next, but if you're able to play it off as, oh yeah, I intended to do that, now it looks cool, people will just go along with it. Any more questions about lighting? Yes?
I'm sometimes DJ on stage. As a DJ, what can I do to help you guys do your job?
So come prepared during sound check and work with our audio techs to make sure that you're good. Please don't turn up your volume too high so that you clip. Like, you know all this stuff, but
I'm speaking more for like what.
Oh, for
kind of
lighting?
your guys' the lighting show.
I mean,
Play good music.
yeah.
Got you covered.
I mean, it's
Play
subjective,
something
but
that
like,
we can get into the groove on.
yeah, like, you'll probably see us dancing here at the tech table during sets. That we do this because we really enjoy it. But besides that, like, I'll talk about this more when we get to the VJ station, but get us your content early so that we can play it back. Like, we will get logos and stuff from the various DJs so we can play as well. And then also just, like, general cues for, like, lighting stuff. Like, I remember back when, like, Squid Game was a big thing, one of the DJs did a remix and was like, oh, can you do, like, make the whole rig flash green and red during that song? I was like, yeah, I can do that. It's just let us know beforehand for that kind of stuff. The general gist of it is let us know as early as possible if you want to do something special, and we can try to make it work.
Especially if you're going to do one of those troll fake outs that a lot of DJs
Yeah,
do.
the worst part is when someone comes to us like 5 minutes before something is due to happen, and it's like, please make this big complicated thing happen, and we're like, we can try, but it's probably not going to happen. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say there's nothing that's more fun when you're doing lights or VJ or whatever, and the DJ plays a song that like you know and love, like one of your favorites or whatever, and you can just hit every cue, every transition just perfectly because you know this and you've got it. Like that's really where the fun of lights are.
All right, let's talk about VJ Station. So this right here is running all the content on the projectors. You'll see it mostly during the dances, but we have used it for playback during some other stuff. Right now we're testing out VC Face, which is hooked up to this camera right here, but we can also switch it over to that camera over there. You can see my beautiful Sona up on the screen that's tracking Rex as they move. Maybe. Kind of glitchy. It doesn't work well with masks. We're trying to figure out better ways around that. Very evolving field of tech. But basically this thing is like OBS or like video player on steroids. You have a ton of different clips in here that you can layer on top of each other, do all sorts of effects on there, and you can even have video inputs. Like we have VC Face running that's getting piped into there. We can also pipe in a camera. Oh yeah, you can do just all sorts of wacky, weird, crazy effects. You can also hook a controller to this to like hit buttons to make it strobe or change colors and stuff. You can also pipe in external sources. Like at the last event I did, we had someone who hooked up their laptop and we were playing back like Bluey and a bunch of old like TV shows and like RGB distorting them and stuff. Yeah, there you go. Turn on RGB distortion. Where is it? There we go. Trippy Blue. Anyway, so that's the VJ machine. Any questions on that?
Who's the gloggy for?
The gluggy? Oh, we were making gluggy memes earlier. I think it's on my Twitter account. Yeah, if any of you hang out in Neos, you probably recognize this. All right, so let's go backstage, and if any more questions about the general tech area here? If not, let's head backstage and
You also
check out
have that visual from last year that was
If you're interested in VJing, you can get a free copy of Resolute. It has like a watermark on it. And just start playing around with it on your home computer.
Nope.
My day job is a.
So as we're wandering back, you can take a look at the cameras that are set up in the audience as well.
Same with Foxworth Kay's also in engineering. Like,
And Kay has stepped away from the video world.
hobby that we've
So
taken way too
we'll wait for him to get back. But
an excuse
let's come in. As you walk into backstage, be aware of where your feet are, be aware of where your arms are. Don't trip on cables, watch your step.
The crazy thing is how many wires there are. That's it.
That is all of our audio that goes from, and video and lighting that goes from there to there. It's just this small bundle, and they're mostly network cables. There's a couple of fiber that we run for video, but they're mostly just, you know, the same Cat 5e you have at home for your home network.
All right, we got everyone back in yet? Almost. Almost. Please do not unplug anything. I don't need that headache.
You don't need that headache.
Nobody needs the headache. We've already spent a whole bunch of time yesterday troubleshooting weird and interesting issues.
Why unplug something when you can just plug two cables? I am filling myself with pain.
I felt pain when you said that.
I feel it myself.
Well, but that's also why we label things. Like if you look at my ArtNet node, every single one of those cables has a number on it that corresponds to which one is plugged in. So if someone swaps it, I know what they did. It's almost like this has happened before. Anyways, welcome to Backstage and to Video Land. This is where all the video production stuff happens. So you can obviously see the back of the projector. We're doing reverse projection. But over here is the video. Hey, do you want to talk about it or should I talk about it?
Yeah, Foxworth talking about it. Okay.
Do you want to talk about video, Foxworth?
I could talk about it to you. I guess I will use the microphone for the speakers that are in the main room that are not necessarily helping you while I'm here. Although I probably do.
Also, this is Foxworth, our wonderful AV lead.
So for A&W, we are running video for here in the room. So we've got, someone said IMAG, and that's image magnification. That's just for benefit for in the room, but we are also running streams too during the day for most events that are going to Twitch. Dances at night are going to Mixcloud. So as well as on channel 19 in the rooms, we have a feed going to that. Right now for this weekend, we are running 4 cameras, combination of, they're all Blackmagic cameras, combination of some of the Ursa broadcast cameras and some of their studio cameras. And I say about using all Blackmagic, honestly, for a lot of our chain is that everything works together really well. So what we've got here, we have one of the cables that is running front to back is a single pair of fiber optic cables. But with an adapter or a multiplexer here, we're actually able to send like, okay, how many pairs?
18.
Like, off of one?
There are 18 ports on the multiplexer.
Yeah, so one fiber, 18 pairs, but on one fiber. So we're able to use that to send multiple video feeds back and forth from the front. We can also use that for just regular computer network. Makes our cabling a lot simpler. For this weekend, and we can maybe kind of, if some people want to see, we can carefully have people come through on this side.
Slowly filter through.
Yeah.
If we can actually start that right now, if people want to come
Yeah.
in.
There's that Sharon.
Yeah, what we've got here is we've got some hardware stream encoders, so when we need to go live to like Mixcloud or Twitch, we can literally just push a button and it'll start the stream up. For our hotel feed, we are actually, one of the things we have in this case are a couple of cards to actually introduce a delay, so that if we really have to, we can cut the feed to the hotel and have like a delay on that if need be. It's excessive, but right now this rack is a spare video switcher, and that's honestly what we're using as a cutoff switch for the hotel feed. Our main video switcher is actually down here. In both cases, we've got a Blackmagic Broadcast 2ME video switcher. We also have a control panel for just actually making it easy to control rather than having to use touchpad, or even like, I mean, you can set it up to do it with a Stream Deck, but we've got the full control surface with T-bar. One of the other things that we have that is going back to, we're using a lot of Blackmagic gear, is we have one of the Blackmagic shader panels. Noel, you want to lift that one up? Honestly, you can just unplug it.
Other Null.
You just unplug
I'm Null Ref, that's Null Fox. It sometimes gets confusing.
Yeah. But the nice thing about having this is for the people that are actually up there running cameras, all they have to worry about is framing the shot and keeping it in focus. Because we have that, we can do all of the exposure adjustments back here so that someone can be looking at a screen with all the cameras up and be adjusting the exposure levels so that they all match, which makes managing and doing a lot of this so much easier. We also have like a laptop back here for handling some video playback stuff. Like we're going to have the film festival later today, where we've got all the video files. We'll be playing them back here. Going back to what Larsis was talking about, we're actually using Dante basically for everything. We have one network switch here that's tied into the Dante system. This box here is giving us our audio out from Audio World out into the ATEM. The ATEM is the video switcher. We have another little Dante adapter there for our video playback, and I know Kay has another Dante adapter here for fitting some stuff in here for recording. Dante is one of those things that if you have everything that can work with it, it's amazing because it significantly cuts down on cables and way more flexible. But you have to have a system that'll work with it. We're fortunate to have that here this year.
Do you remember what we plugged into input 21 or 31?
31? I thought that was a playback laptop.
Did you have more questions?
Among other things that we do have here is we have the base stations for the intercom system that we have. So both back here at all the camera positions at front of house, and we also have some like on either side of the stage. We'll have intercom stations kind of set up so that we can keep in touch with each other during a production. And then we also have some wireless packs that we can use as well for, particularly if we have someone who's going to be like a floating stage manager, or if we have someone actually on a Steadicam running into our system, that'll work for that. I think that's kind of the big overview for video.
Any questions?
What's the yellow zucchini?
Yes.
What is Dante?
Dante is audio over IP. Dante is really handy because you can, like let's say like in this case we have like 3 Dante things here that can receive Dante signal. We can just in software say send the signal to all 3 of these, and it can even do it over multicast to conserve bandwidth. Or it can do a unicast to each one, a little bit more bandwidth but faster to set up. And that's where Dante is really handy, because if you want to be able to have really complex routing of the signals, it makes it significantly easier because it's all in software and it's just on the network.
You just plug in one network cable and you can send a whole bunch of stuff over it. We also do the same with lighting. We run over what's called ArtNet, which is basically like Dante for lighting. It basically takes DMX, which is the underlying protocol of lighting that we use, and sends it over the network. And in fact, the thing I pointed to back over there is our ArtNet node, which is where the network cable comes in and all of the DMX cables come out to get plugged into the lights, which I'll explain here in a bit.
If you look along the side of the wall, or if you noticed that coming through, there's just a bundle, a very tiny bundle of cable running along the wall there.
Also right down here.
Yeah, right down there too. And that is all of our data going from the front of the house to the back. And it's mostly just the same type of Ethernet cables you plug your laptop into at home.
I should also mention the terms front of house is where all the peoples are, and back of house is where all the peoples are, behind the stage.
Yeah, I think right now we are running 4 Ethernet, 1 fiber, and 4 XLR cables. The XLR cables are 2 of them are being used for the intercom stuff. We ended up not doing the data network over fiber, so that's why we have an extra Ethernet cable. But Two Ethernet are for Dante because Dante does primary and secondary so that if a cable gets cut, we don't lose signal. Then one cable for ArtNet and then one cable for just data for general like control. That is actually one of the things when you start getting into like digital mixers, lighting consoles, and things like that. A lot of those can have remote control access to them. And so it's really handy to have access to that. So like we have our wireless network here, which is from that network we can control the lighting console, we could remote control the video switcher from anywhere that we have network access to. Makes a lot of things a lot simpler.
Any more questions about video stuff?
I forgot to mention, we also have a bunch of just recorders. I think we have, between everything, I think we have like 6 hyperdecks, and then Kay has his Apollo here for recording. So we can actually we can be recording kind of like between 8 and 10 different video feeds if we really wanted to.
Video goes in, film hard drives come out. Yes.
Are y'all using audience mics this year for the streams and recordings?
Not yet. I know that Larsis is planning on getting something set up. We just, to the moment, I don't think we've gotten those deployed yet.
I think Lars actually wanted to set it up like during or shortly after this panel. So if anyone's interested in how you set up audience mics.
Hey Larsis, do you want to set up audience mics later?
Are you talking about the prop mics?
Yes.
Yeah, those are already set up.
Well, there you go.
Any more questions? Or should we move on to the next thing? All right, let's move on to the next thing. Woo. Okay, so we're going to talk about lighting power. So this is the Artendo that I was talking about. From all lighting. You can see network cable comes in here, and then these are physical BMX runs. BMX is divided into what's called universes, which is basically a single run of cable. And in this case, we have 7 coming out of here, and then we also have 2 for the 2 towers in the back. All you do is you just sort of daisy chain this cable through all the lights, and it just works. Each light is given what's called an address, which is basically to say, where can I talk to you at? And then I just enter that same address into the console, and it figures out everything of where it needs to go. Besides setting up ArtNet, we also need to figure out power, which is what brings me to right over here. So everyone wants to come gather around. You can see this is the heart of the whole stage. Do not touch this. It is very dangerous. Well, not dangerous right now, but there's a lot of power going through that thing. We've got like a 200.
So I think we actually, I think we do have
service back there coming out through cams into here, which then gets split out into 2 3-phase 30 amp circuits for lighting, 2 for audio, and then a whole bunch of miscellaneous other ones for other things. Specifically, the lighting, you'll see once we go up on stage, is going to 2 what we call dog houses, or basically breakout boxes that are going to be backstage that are providing 6 20 amp circuits worth of lighting for all the stuff here. So what's the numbers on that? 6. That's 120 amps just for the stage of lighting.
the doghouses are only, one doghouse is only 3 circuits.
Right, so we have 6 total. Right, yes, okay, so that's 60 amps for the stage. Yes, okay, so not nearly that much. But we're also, actually no, because we are also running 2 additional circuits because we got the Vipers in. We had a last minute rental change. The truck didn't show up with 4 of our lights, so instead of getting some Mac Quantums, or Quantum profiles, I got some Viper profiles, which unfortunately, while they're bigger and cooler lights, they draw way more power, so we had to reconfigure which circuits we were running to everything. And the way we usually do that is I have a giant spreadsheet that I put all the numbers into, and then I massage the spreadsheet until the numbers are happy, and that we're not going to flip a breaker, which we have not flipped a breaker on lighting so far. We did have an incident earlier where video flipped a breaker.
We didn't need to mention that.
Oh. But it's important to do power calculations because you have a lot of current draw coming from all this equipment, and you need to make sure that you don't flip a breaker. Anyways, below the power is all of our audio racks. Foxworth, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So on audio here, when we keep talking about Dante, this down here is one of our main, the main back of house Dante rack. So So we've got a couple of network switches in there for Dante, and then we have a Yamaha Rio 3216 or no 32. It's
Her name is Rio and she dances on the sand.
basically this is our digital stage box. Like in an analog audio system, you would have what we call a snake, and it's basically a big honking cable with a bunch of cables in it. Goes to a box with a bunch of jacks. The difference here is we've got all of the input and output jacks, but it's only connected with just 2 Ethernet cables. So again, the beauty of Dante is 2 Ethernet cables versus a cable that could be like 2 inches in diameter. It's fantastic. Right now we've got some Shure ULXD wireless microphones. The ULX series also does Dante, so keeping with the theme of Dante, these just get to get hooked up with an Ethernet cable. We don't have to run any analog cables to it. This is our rack for our monitors, basically the stage wedges. The rack underneath that power distribution is for the main PA, as well as the little front fill speakers. And then the last amp set over there is
Did you have
for
a
the
question?
subwoofers.
Or were you just waving hi?
Waving hi first behind you.
Okay, cool. Continue.
I mean, that's kind of it. Like back here, it's basically wireless, power, and amplifiers.
Yep, and then those things right there are the 2 antennas for the wireless microphone. So if you're wondering how I can be holding a microphone with no wires attached to it, it's because the little wavy energy is going into that thing.
Super technical.
Very, very technical.
What are the flashing green lights on that box mean? Yeah. Where the plugs are?
Which ones?
The flashing green.
So basically the things here that are flashing when I'm talking?
Yep.
So on this board here, there's some LEDs. So all the ones on this side are outputs. These are inputs. And on each of these, when there's signal coming through, it'll just light up so you know that there's actual signal being passed out that port. And I believe even on the inputs, it also will do that for showing signal there. We just don't have anything. We literally have nothing going analog in other than these guys here, which is running up to the stage for the DJ stuff. Kate just handed me his tablet because this is like we can control the video switcher anywhere in the room if we need to through the software.
Yeah. You can also do that with the audio system. You'll sometimes see us walking around with like an iPad, just tuning the sound system. In theory, I could do that with lighting because there is an app for it, but
It's not great.
I like having lots of buttons to push, so I usually stay at the console. But in theory,
the Magic Q app isn't that great.
it's not that great, but in theory, we could run this whole system from a tablet that we're walking around the room with, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, there's one other thing that's over here, and this is actually just something that we have from the hotel. And this is something they provide us. We literally just run a cable over here. And we've got a little box we plug into for feeding the hotel's TV system. So basically, we literally just plug an HDMI cable in, and that shows up on channel 19. And then we just leave it there where it's nice and safe and warm.
Any questions so far about power in the audio racks or anything else? No questions? Okay, let's check out this backstage area and stage.
So one thing that we did not talk about is projectors.
The speakers there from the ceiling, if you want to take a look at one of these. There's another one right there, but
Compression driver mid-range.
yep. Basically just audio in, audio pass through.
Everyone come filtering in here. There's lots more space over here.
20 pounds? 30 pounds?
I honestly forget how many lumen these projectors are, but they're plenty bright for what we need. I don't think we can understand you from here, Lars. Thank you. They are 10,000 lumen projectors, and rather than being a standard like lamp-based projector, these are laser projectors, which means a lot more brightness for nowhere near as much current draw.
So that's projectors. Also over here we have the stage manager station. which we've got like our printer will usually have a laptop here for printing out like run of show and all that kind of stuff, and then just a table to put paperwork on. First aid kit in case anyone like trips or has a boo-boo. And then we also have here the giant quad, which we will be having all the detectives signing, and we auction it off during like the charity auction at the end. So if any of you are interested in getting the giant quad of the stage that we actually used to build all this thing, come by the charity auction at the end. Any questions? This is also the backstage area where all the performers will be hanging out like during opening ceremonies, dance competition, all that fun stuff. Any questions so far?
When's the auction for that?
It should be like right before closing.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Nope. Okay, let's go up on stage. Single file line, watch your step.
Get all the rigging for the show.
I didn't even realize we set
And spread out. We don't need everyone all concentrating in one area on the stage. The stage decking is pretty strong, but it's not super strong. As an added side note, if you're at a con and you're at a dance, please don't like jump synchronously on top of stage decking. That's how you break it. Yeah.
Like BLFC.
Yeah, we have had times where it's actually gotten broken because everyone just started jumping all at the same time. So if you do that, you'll probably have people come up and start trying to clear people off the stage. Can everyone start moving over this way more?
You should also mention like the
So that
differences
people can pull turn.
between stage risers and actual stage decks.
Do you want to talk about it?
I don't like talking in the microphone.
Okay. What should I say?
Like the differences between risers and. Okay. Fine.
So I asked Nora to talk about this, but she doesn't really have.
Yeah.
So these are what are called risers, and these fold up. And you'll see at a lot of events, they have risers, the hotel has risers and stuff like that. But if you go to like a concert, they'll have like actual deck that they'll come out and it will like, they'll put uprights and then put the stage deck down on top of it. So these are like rated for like 500 pounds per panel or something like that. And then actual stage deck is rated for like, the stuff we use at the LLC is like a little bit over a ton per panel. And then there's stuff like, if we really wanted to go overboard, we could get stuff like steel deck in that you could drive a car onto. So these kind of things, these are not like latched together really well, so they kind of wiggle apart. And like actual stage deck like MFF and BLFC and FC uses actual stage deck. It's all bolted together so it doesn't wobble and wherever, and it's very sturdy. But we did have a bunch of fursuiters break a panel at BLFC, so obviously jumping on it is not really good.
Thank you, Kay. Any questions about stage decking? Nope? Okay, let's talk about lighting. Look at behind you. I see some of you have already been touching it. Please do not pull cables out. This is the upstage lighting rig. The way we have it set up is there's actually 12 of those poles, including the ones off to either side of the stage. Those are on base plates, which if you slightly lean over very safely, don't fall off. You can see there's 2 sandbags on each to hold them. Also, if you look back there, you'll also see like the dog houses and all the cabling for all power coming up to there. So the specific fixtures that we're using here is these sort of striped lights here are called bright stripes. And we have, I believe, 36 of them all set out. The nice thing about them is that they're sort of individual LED controllable, or what's called pixel mapping, and that there are a bunch of pixels on them and you can map it to do fancy things. Like doing cabins like we're doing right now. They aren't super bright, but they're really nice for adding a lot of sort of interest to a rig when you don't have haze. So normally when you go to a concert, you see all the beams flying through the air. That's not natural. That's because they put something called haze in the air, or fog, that allows the beams to refract off of it so you can see it. We do not have the ability to, well, is complicated, but we're not running haze here. So when I was designing the rig, I wanted to do as much sort of pixel mapping and having a sort of visual and bright rig that I could do that didn't involve having lots of beams in the air, so that we could have a cool rig without having haze. Hopefully in future years we can have haze, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
Too expensive with the fire
Especially
module.
if you're running expand.
It's a complicated series of packages. If you want to know more about dealing with hotels and negotiating contracts, so the smaller lights, you can see the square ones are called hot boxes. And the ones below in the middle are called the 12P hexes. And these are sort of our workhorse par lights. They're the ones that get super bright and sort of blast you in the face during dances, but also can work well for doing sort of room ambience during other events, and just sort of lighting things up. And then in the middle, we have a bunch of what are called ADJ VisiWatch Z19s. Do we have someone at the console? Can you hit the Z19s and hit forwards on them so that they rotate up? Should just be Z19 group and then in the movement pellets just hit forwards? Not working? Okay, well anyways, those are actually moving and they can tilt forwards, and the reason I got them is because they have a bunch of individual pixels within them that you can also map. There we go! Now you can see them. Each of those individual sort of nodules in there can be turned on and off independently. So we can do some cool patterns in there. We'll probably program those later for dances. Yes?
What's the numbers on the screens on the...
Yes, and let me get to that. So remember earlier when I said that you have to give it an address in order for it to work? That's what the address is. So each run of cabling is, so it's a universe, okay, let me back it up. Okay, so the protocol these lights run on is called DMX512. The reason it's called DMX512 is because you have 512 channels of control. You have to fit as many lights as you can in there, and each light takes a certain amount of channels. So some lights, like just a simple parcan, will just have only a few channels because it just needs to maybe turn on and off, have a few colors, maybe strobe. But something like the bright stripes that have a whole bunch of different individual pixels that you can turn on and off, or the Z19s that are doing movement and other fancy stuff, will have a lot of channels. Now, you can change which channel mode they operate in, which is basically trading off how many features do you want versus how many channels do you want to take up. And it's just sort of deciding what's going to fit in the rig best. In this case, I'm running all these in like max channel mode, so I have the most amount of control over them. And then the idea is that you figure out how many of those will fit in 512 channels on a universe, and then you give them an address so that they're not overlapping with each other.
Can the smaller...
Yes. What was that?
Can the smaller circular ones move as well?
No. Well, you can turn them, but they can't be controlled via DMX. I wish they could. Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the VisiWatch Z19s have motorized focus as well, right?
Yes. Can you rack the focus in and out on the Z19s? Let's see, I want to do something to find the button for it.
Oh, there it goes.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, see, it just moves in and out. But if we had haze, you would see it would be like a narrow beam and then a much wider beam. Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the AWOO sign. Yeah. That thing has been misbehaving ever since we started using it.
Well, that's what you get for using dip switches.
Yes. It's absolutely wonderful. I love it. It's like, AWOO, but
It lights up with this gallery heavy light.
yeah. It lights up with that one?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now we know.
Yay!
Thank you for figuring that out. Okay. So that's that part of the lighting rig. Let's now turn 180 degrees and look over here. So you can see, lighting up the stage so that everyone can see you, we have 6 of these par 38 lights that are each hooked into dimmer packs.
Where's the laser?
That is, each of those is very simple. It's literally just like a plug that you could plug into your wall and it would turn on. But in order to get them to be able to dim and turn on and off, we have what's called dimmer packs, which is basically a whole bunch of plugs that I could control from the console over there to make increase or decrease the amount of power I'm sending them to turn on and off that side. There we go, they're turning on and off. Okay, so that's how that works. Then on either side we have Mac Quantum washes, which are fancy lights that can do spots and gobos and all sorts of other fancy things. Gobos specifically are if you see like the patterns on the floor or the walls that are getting projected, that's a gobo. Like that. It's basically a pattern in like some metal inside the light that the light shines through and then can throw that onto the wall. Oh, they're moving now. Yeah, those can also move. They're absolutely fantastic. I was originally going to have 6 of them, but we didn't get them, which I'll show you the other lights that we got, which are big but awesome. So those things I'm mostly using as like spots to light up specific areas of the stage, like on opening ceremonies it was lighting up the podium and the ASL interpreter. But the nice thing is that they can be moved around and repositioned depending on what they need to be used for. Like during dance competition, I'll probably use them to light up the judges' table down there. And then during the dances, what we can do is put on some gobos, put on a prism to make them like really wide, and then just put them on the dance floor and we can move around. Any questions about all the stuff here? For lighting?
What's a gobo stand for?
Go between. Goes before optics.
Go between?
Yep. Go between. Goes between the light.
Yep.
Perfect, there's your answer.
I need to draw my textbook.
Yep. Anyways, so to talk about sound, you can see stage wedges in front of us. This is how the performers hear, because you can see the line arrays up there and the front fills here are all pointed away. So in order for the performers to actually hear what's going on, they need speakers on the stage. Now, the cool thing about these is that you can individually control what's coming to each of them. We aren't doing any concerts here, but if we were, oftentimes different performers will want to hear different things in their mix. So we will have the audio engineer come in and set up different mixes for each one of them. Also, during the dances, when the DJs are playing, we will have these set up so that they're controllable by the DJs. So we'll have the mixer here with a knob for monitors so that the DJs can come in and adjust how loud the sound is for them on the stage, so that they don't have to like be completely blown out and not be able to hear anything.
Yeah. You should tell them about Texas headphones.
Oh yeah, so we're normally just going to be using stage wedges for this, but there's a thing called Texas headphones, which is basically you take an entire sound system and you put it on either side of the DJ. Basically like a subwoofer and then some tops over there.
We call them
Those
Texas
typically point
headphones.
source, right?
What?
We call them Texas headphones.
Texas headphones.
Texas headphones.
Because they're really big headphones.
They're really big headphones. Yes. All right. Did you have anything to add about the sound system, or anyone have questions?
Lars is sitting here pushing a bunch of buttons on the board. I think he's going to try and demonstrate something, but I'm not 100% sure.
Something interesting may or may not happen. Oh yeah, you can see we can turn up the sound here. We have control over where the sound comes from, be afraid.
That's not fair, I only have a mono mic on this thing.
Okay, any more questions before we wander off the stage? Nope? Okay, let's wander off. You can go off on either side and let's gather in front. Once again, be careful not to trip on any cables or knock things over.
How y'all run 2 confidence monitors this year?
Oh, I forgot to mention that. All right, in order to make things not a pain for Lars, I'm gonna stand over here so that I'm out of the way of the sound system. An interesting thing about microphones is that if you put them in front of the speaker that the sound is coming out of, the sound from the speaker goes back into the microphone and does something called feeding back, which makes really loud and angry noises.
Yep.
Yes, that's not going to happen. We spent a lot of time on Thursday doing what's called ringing out the room, which is essentially intentionally making the sound system feedback, figuring out what it's doing wrong, and putting measures in place to make sure it doesn't happen. So when you have a performer who's not really doing the right thing and like puts their mic right next to a stage wedge or walks in front of the sound system, we're prepared for it and we can deal with it. So sound system in front of here, you can actually, two things I forgot to talk about. These things right here, these TVs sitting on the subwoofers, those are what's called confidence monitors. And that's so that the performers can see what's on the camera. So they can know what's going on in the room or where the camera's focused on them. But we can also do things like put like presenters notes there so that if they have like a prompt that they need to read from, they can look at that as well. So, sound system in front of here. Foxworth or Lars, do you want to talk about this thing?
What was that?
Do you want to talk about these speakers that everyone's standing in front of?
Oh yeah, sure, let me come up there.
Okay, well, while Lars is walking up here, I can tell you about the final pieces of lighting. So you can see we have two more sort of sections of lighting on either side here. Same as the upstage area. Now, oh yeah, I should also talk about directions. When I say upstage, I mean the back of the stage. When I say downstage, I mean like the front of the stage. You'll also often hear us refer to directions as either stage right and left or house right and left. What that means is, if I'm standing on the stage and facing out this way, this is my left, this is my right. If I'm standing in the house and looking this way, this is my left, this is my right. So that you can know which way it's going without saying right or left and then being like, no, you're right, my right, that sort of thing. Here's Lars.
So you're interested in my sound system here. Here at BDFC this year, it's actually the same rig as last year. It's JBL VT4886s. There's certain tiers from companies, and JBL is one of the easiest to explain. Vertec is their entry-level full line array. That's the one you're going to see at a lot of concerts and festivals and stuff. Then you have what's called the VTX series. That's their high-end series. And then you have the VTX A series. That's their latest and greatest. These are the VTs. You know, we're not Imagine Dragons here, but what we got going on is I have 6 boxes per side. That's because in those months leading up to the show, we figured out how much volume we're going to need to fill this room properly. And then what we did is we angled them. So you notice that they're fairly flat at the top and they gently slope in there. That's actually how you load a line. You go ahead and you calculate what your splay is going to be. That's what that curvature is called. So we have this one aimed roughly right about here on the floor. And I actually have the top box tuned to be 6 feet off the ground, 12 feet or 15 feet forward of that back wall, because that's where I'm going to be doing mixing from. I need to be able to hear somewhat what you guys are hearing here on the floor. Except we run into a problem, and that's these down here. These are our subwoofers. We have dual 18 subs here. And they're a little bit bigger than what you probably have at home, unless you're a friend Cypher, in which case his actually beats ours. Yeah, I want to have Cyphers right here too. But these are fairly powerful. You probably heard them last night if you were in the room. And they run into a problem where you notice that there's a gap here. And that this one's a little bit forward of that one. And what I actually had to do is calculate what the delay should be on this one as compared to this one, which is actually delayed from that one. And that way you don't create what's called a destructive frequency. What that'll do is you'll actually get less bass despite having more speakers, because the driver on the far outside here is actually canceling out the bass being provided by the ones on the inside driver there. So, real easy one here, 0 milliseconds of delay, 1 millisecond of delay, and 3.21 is what this one is set to, because that is the exact phase of what the outer driver on this one would be in comparison to the inner driver on that one. This array is also split in half, so from our amplifiers, which they gave you a tour of earlier, there are 3 amplifiers, and each one has 2 channels. So they're set up so that the channels are 1, 2, 1, and we have a split out that's able to send up to 4 speakers at once. That's what's called NL8, because it's got 8 wires in it. We can split up to 4 speakers from NL8, we can split up to 2 from NL4, and NL2 is only 1. So we have a splitter here. So these are labeled 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we're able to take our amplifiers and utilize them more efficiently so that we don't have to have a giant wall of them, as impressive as that looks. And so that's just calculating that phase delay with these alone. And then we have to do that again for the mains to these. So those actually have a very, very small amount of delay. I think it's 0.3 milliseconds what I have that set to. so that because it's a longer wavelength, I have these fire a little bit first, and then those kick in and give you the higher frequencies because you need less energy to give yourself a higher frequency. It's also why your subwoofers tend to be 1,000 watts or 2,000 watts, and your mains can be 25 or 100 depending. And I'll mention the ring out earlier. That's a fairly intensive process, and if you're ever in the room while we're doing one, I'll usually give a warning of some kind saying, I didn't explain the front fills. So the other problem is that if you're on this dance floor right here, you're in between the mains, and those only project 90 degrees wide. So where I'm standing would be very dead. I just get a lot of bass, and there's some people who like that, but they also wear Beats headphones, so whatever. So for all of us normal listeners, I have these here. These are taking a mono sum of this signal here going to these two because that's a full left and that's a full right. And this is a summation of both of those processed by the board and sent into the system so that if you're on the floor here, you can hear what the DJs are playing, or if we happen to have a singer, what they're singing, should you care to hear what they're singing. By the way, we are going to have a few singers at this con, and they're going to be very good. So with all of that said, once you have all of the phasing timed, the power calculated, the lines hung, the speakers powered, you're able to pass signal, then you just have to start doing all of your EQ work. That's making sure that the room sounds good, because you can have a loudspeaker, but it's not necessarily a good sounding loudspeaker until you're done with that. And some are better than others. These actually don't have a lot of EQ in them. They don't need it. They're just that good. If you have something like JBL VRX, for example, those are those ones you see at weddings on sticks usually. Those need a little bit more work than that. And then if you have those ones that are standing on top of stuff, those need significantly more work than even those. And then all that said, then you have to think about your inputs. And then you have to think about what's called gain structure. And that's actually one of the key things on this. We're starting from the source and going to the mains, and you have to figure out how much gain you're doing along the way each time so that it all stays balanced and clean. I tend to use SMPTE standards if possible, and that means that I'm mixing at unity on the board. And if you saw it earlier, you notice it looks very boring. All the faders that are up are at 0, and you attenuate your input gain to be able to do that. That also means that you have to balance your amplifier output volume back there. So you say, I want my room to hit 90 dB peak, for example, 90 decibels A-weighted, which is attenuated for human hearing versus true output. So what we'll do there is I'll say, I'm going to play a signal, I'm going to play a unity there, and I'm going to blow out everyone's eardrums because if I have the amps up all the way at full tilt boogie, it's going to be painful for everyone. So I'll say, okay, I'm going to play one speaker to see what its output's going to be, and then turn them down to meet the one I want to do. But I've only done that for one speaker. I said earlier that the line arrays are here so that the volumes stack so I get more overall volume. So then I have to figure out what that volume add is going to be. And then I turn them down a bit more. Then I balance the mains and the subs. And that way you can have everything at unity on the board back there, and the system fully up at operational volume. And it also gives you some headroom so that if someone comes up and says, hey, it's a bit quiet here, I can always turn it up. Any questions on any of that so far? Yeah, go ahead.
I've got a million and one questions.
Okay, here we go.
So, how precisely do you have to measure the offset of the speakers, and how do you do that?
It depends on how neurotic we're being, actually. So, for this type of show here, where I actually had 2 full days to do that, I probably spent a good, what would you say, about 2-3 hours doing that? Yeah. And a lot of it was actually a trial and error too, because I can do the math and I have the math, and even that was just slightly off because that's making a lot of guesses off of where it should be in relation to it. For example, this subwoofer here should technically be right next to this one, but there's physical things in the room.
That's my fault.
Yeah. Audio and lighting get to blame each other for a lot of things, by the way.
My beautiful towers here holding up the lighting rig got in the way of the subwoofers. My towers holding up all the lighting got in the way of the subwoofers because we put them up first and didn't coordinate. That's why you need to coordinate between departments, because that's important.
And he's holding up his speakers too.
Yeah, it's holding up your speakers too.
And you could blame the rigger.
Oh, also, I would love to take more questions, but we are actually at the end of the panel. If you want to stick around and continue talking with us, you're welcome to, but if you've got another one to run off to, this is just your heads up that that's going on. So if everyone's okay, we can continue going for a bit afterwards.
The room is empty for us for the next hour or so.
Yeah, so Lars, continue your audio discussions.
So yeah, I spent a good 2 hours figuring out where things are going to go and, you know, making that correction there. Because it's not ideal, but it's also not the end of the world.
So you just do that by, so you said you did essentially a lot of it by ear, or are you measuring with like a meter or something?
I do it by ear, but that's because I was trained very old school. There's a producer I know over in England actually that works for Abbey Road. And he's been DJing since about 1986, whenever it was Jungle and Drums Underground scene. So he taught me how to do it by ear, and he told me what to listen for. And we've done probably a good 3 or 4 dozen shows together at this point. So what we'll do is we'll play a song that we know extremely well, which is another way to do it. If there's a song that you know extremely well, and you know what it should sound like on your system, then use that and even play the loop and annoy everyone while you're doing it. Mine tends to be A New Day Has Come by Celine Dion. And there's a good reason for that. Celine Dion's music is extremely, extremely well mixed. It's got a full range to it, from about 10 hertz all the way up to about 30,000, depending on the recording. And she has a very clean voice. And if you ever listen to that song, whenever she's actually hitting the melody on it, her voice tends to hit harshest at 630, 1250, and 6300 hertz. But the interesting thing about that is that there's a lot of speakers that also hit those very well because they set their neutral point at 300 hertz. That's where you want it to be if you want a lot of vocals to come through loud and clear. So based off of all that, you'll go in and say, I'm going to tune those frequencies down a bit. And you're not going to tune them out of the system because you need them there, but you're going to tune them down a little bit so that it still sounds clear without piercing everyone's ears whenever she hits those frequencies.
And so it's the same by ear stuff for the EQ on the line speakers?
Yeah, because there's no computer setting for sounding good.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah.
No mathematical
when I'm doing audio engineering, when I'm doing mastering work, it'd be a lot easier to just hit the good button and I'm good. Yes, I saw a question down here.
How good or bad of an idea is it to EQ your system to the THX deep note?
We usually play that as a meme, actually. But the thing there is that it is a very clean frequency sweep and it's extremely predictable. So when you're playing deep note and you know what it should sound like, because the thing about the deep note, what makes it so powerful? It's actually a deep sub-bass hit, a bass hit about 80 hertz, and then it's got your vocal range in there too, between 300 and 600 hertz, and then it's got a little bump right around 4,000 hertz there too. And all of that hitting at once is that larger-than-life sound that you're used to from movies.
If I remember correctly, it's 30 different voices.
Yes, it is.
Doing a gigantic
Mm-hmm.
C major.
Yeah, what am I playing here? Hold on. Yeah, by the way, this is my cheat these days. If I'm just doing room fill audio, I just use Spotify. This is actually not best practices, by the way. If I'm actually doing this for live broadcast, every track we play will be downloaded and it will be played locally. You do not use cloud services for being able to do these if you're doing them in a live environment.
Internet goes down.
Internet goes down and you're kind of stuck.
Hey Lars, you should do a frequency sweep.
So, on that note, actually, because I'm not actually going to do a proper frequency sweep in here just yet, there's a lot of meme stuff that we play, things that we know are going to sound a specific way on systems. Like Gluggy, actually. You guys saw Gluggy earlier for a meme thing. I did a lot of stuff with Hasbro over the years, and I've also done a bunch of My Little Pony conventions, and half the time was the representation on the ground to make sure their IP was being represented in a way that was conducive to how they wanted to present it. But during that, we discovered that the theatrical version of the movie, the uncompressed video and uncompressed audio version that doesn't really exist outside of movie theaters, there's a part where a character breaks the sound barrier. And the interesting thing about that is it's a frequency hit from 9 hertz to 252 hertz with 19 seconds of decay. What that means is most of your bass hits, they're instant, they're just a pop that happens in the moment, right? When you have lots of decay, it just keeps going. So whenever that note hits, instead of thumping you in the chest, it feels like it's pushing you backwards. And you learn things about that whenever it comes to decay and frequency sweeps and that sort of thing. I actually played it in here earlier at a lower than ideal volume just because I wanted to see what it sounded like. And again, this goes back to the deep note question. It has to sound clean. You have to have all the sub bass there and the bass frequencies, but it can't sound muddy. Because you want
I don't think it should be rattling in the room if the lighting fixture.
Yeah, and also if any of you were at Painted Desert FurCon, their lighting fixtures had thick sheets of plastic in them that we vibrated quite a bit.
I need to go help set up the VR portal. Did anyone else have lighting questions before I go? It's the Alaska flag. Or the what? Oh, it's a flashlight. Yeah, I can turn it on and see things because the lights go off sometimes when you're working with lights. Also, if you want to go back and press buttons on the consoles, I'm sure they'd be happy to let you.
I wouldn't be happy, no, I'm kidding. Any other audio questions while we're at the front of the room?
I'm really curious about the ringing out process.
That.
Not like I want a demonstration.
I mean, I can give you a demonstration. I can just go zero out the EQ. We can do it from scratch. But what we generally do is, there's three ways that you can do it. One is software, which is good. It gets you 90% of the way there, right? The problem is that the frequencies that it cancels out might not make you sound natural. Because again, there's no computer algorithm yet that says sound good. And I say yet because we're actually getting there. And then you can do it the way that I do it, which is I generally hand the microphone to someone who's willing to be up there while they get their ears blasted with a bit of feedback. And we'll go in and they'll just talk in monologue. Like we made jokes about the power of 1 and 2, and how the power of 1 and 2, is that what you guys do through the life? Be not led astray by the powers of 3 and 4. We just make up memes and stuff up there while we're doing that. Or we read a Wikipedia article. That's how we learned about Channel 69, which is a television station in Georgia, by the way. Or your third option is you set the microphone down on a chair and you just crank the gain until it feeds back, and you just look at that pure frequency. And that's a pure room tone frequency at that point. That's what the system in the room is going to feed back at, no matter what. And the thing there is that you can actually combine those two processes. If you do a pure room tone frequency sweep to figure out what it's going to be, and then you generally set your gain higher than it's going to be whenever you're giving a show. Like right now, this microphone has 16 decibels of gain on it, which is fairly standard. But when we're doing the ring out, we actually had up to 40. And that way, I know that I can turn it up to 40 decibels of gain standing exactly where I am, or even worse, on the dance floor, because it's a hard surface, it's going to bounce frequencies a lot more than this carpet is. And I know that I can turn it all the way up to that point and not have it feedback. And it means that if it's someone like me, who's going to be fairly well spoken and know how to hold the microphone, it means that I can keep it down here. And if I hand it to someone else who's, maybe a bit shyer, or maybe does the rap hold, or does this hold, I can just turn it up on them and have them still come through loud and clear. By the way, I call this one the bouquet hold. CEOs like to do it, and I like to think that they've just met their first love, which happens to be the stage, and they don't know what to do, and that iPad's actually a box of chocolates in their mouth. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just take pictures of the line array for research purposes?
Yeah, sure.
Later, not now,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Anyone else? Anyone want to hear really stupid things played on the system? Yeah, I saw one person being honest, everyone actually does.
Yes.
What dumb thing do you got to show us?
Well, how'd you like to actually hear that RainBOOM?
Michael Jackson's Human Nature.
Yeah, Morgan knows what I'm on about. All right, so this is going to be fairly loud, so I'm going to ask that doors be closed over there.
I guess it's really quiet sounds they can get through.
And I generally have the system here tuned to hit no louder than about 90 decibels. So we're not hitting festival volumes here. But if you want to know where the best place in the room to actually be for the RainBOOM to hit, it's actually right behind this line of chairs right here. Just so you guys know, this RainBOOM actually has another purpose. We use it to test breakers. And at the final year of BronyCon, we blew, what was it, 2 of them? Yeah, we blew 2 breakers at BronyCon. Until the final day, they shut off one of our line arrays, so we had the power overhead, and we hit 134 decibels at 30 hertz. Ladies and gentlemen in the house, we are going to play something very loud. Please be aware that this may affect your hearing. So if you are affected by loud noises, please leave the room at this time or wear appropriate hearing protection. This has been your warning. Thank you.
I know the world can't get you down. Some things don't work out quite the way that you thought. Feeling like all your best days are done. Your fears and doubts are all you've got. But there's a light shining deep inside beneath those fears and doubts. So just squash them and let it shine for all the world to see that it is time, yeah, time to be awesome. Awesome, it's time to be so awesome. Awesome, it's time to be so awesome.
You've no idea how hard it's been.
It's time to be awesome.
This dull routine we've been forced to do.
Don't let them rob you of who you are. Be awesome, it's all up to you.
I feel
I knew you'd get it in it. And now for the finishing touch.
So again, that was about 85 decibels. Keep in mind every 3 decibels is a doubling the sound pressure level. So 134 is getting pretty up there. The loudest one that's ever been done, by the way, of that particular recording was done in a rock quarry outside of Los Angeles where we had 143 decibels and 30 hertz. And that's because we had God's own D&D rig out there with 68 total subwoofers. Took us 3 days to set that up. Alright, you're clear to open the doors. Loud noises are done in the room for the time being. And that's also where communication comes in handy, being able to tell all departments what's going on. Any questions on sound?
Can you explain again why you have access to that sound file?
No. Any other questions that I can't answer? Also, all you feel free, hang around, ask questions, shadow us if you want. We're happy to teach.
If someone wanted to get into doing stuff like this, like with sound and lighting, how would you go about that?
Well, that's the thing is that here in the fandom, there's a lot of us who do this professionally for a living. For example, I work for a company called DreamTech. We're an international broadcast company, and I've done contract work for NEP, but I got into that because we were working in fandom audiovisual for a long time, and I got to list those as professional experience. The way you do that is, for example, I wasn't the AV lead of BronyCon, I was the director of audiovisual for the Lunar Solace Corporation. It looks a lot more impressive on the resume. If you want to get into and learn how, honestly, just volunteer. We're accepting applications all the time. So if you want to come in and say, hey, you know, I want to work this convention, it's local to me, and I want to learn sound, just go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to help run sound. And you'll probably be under myself or Foxworth or someone else who's one of the sound engineers in the fandom. And we're absolutely happy to teach. I actually help with second stage at BLFC as well. And we actually treat that as our teaching stage.
The laziest.
Yes.
So you don't require experience necessarily to get started in a volunteer position for
No, no experience necessary. Passion's all that's required.
Just show up.
Yeah. Actually, Morgan, here's a great example of that. They just showed up one day, and
They approved my application, and I'd never stop showing up.
yeah, exactly. Because most of the time, all I'm going to do is the most I might ever do whenever if people treat it like a job. I had someone show up in a suit and tie to the little Discord call I have with them beforehand. And it's literally just a thing I do to say, hi, I'm this, I'm just here to put your mind at ease, and I'm making sure that you're a real person and not a bot who signed up from 4chan. And once I make that determination, I'll just say, okay, yeah, you have the drive, you obviously have the passion, come on, show up, we'll see you on the day. So yeah, every convention I work, we take applications and we're happy to teach new people. I went into this because I wanted to get good. And then once I was good, I realized I wanted to train my replacement. Not because I want to quit necessarily, but because I like being able to hang out with people. And I'm a bit weird, and this is one of those places I get to do that. It's actually a whole thing where I wanted a safe space where I could go and just have fun. And I want everyone else to be able to as well. But yeah, I think we're well past done with the actual panel portion. But like I said, if you just want to hang out, see how we do things, and figure out what you want to do here, you guys were given the tour. So what do you want to do?
I want to push buttons.
You want to push buttons? What do you want to push buttons on?
Lights or sound? Lights or sound?
Or video.
Or video. Yeah.
I need more video friends.
Video. It's actually
Upstage truss is working. We got the dim chase running on it and it looks pretty.
all department stores are opening.
Enter if you dare. Well, look who got here first.
Ooh, looking pretty. Quantum Profile's doing work.
Come in, be ready to sweat. I was born sweaty.
Oh no! Our updates! God, you Our projectors are updating! Oh no, it's back to normal. We're dead.
Well, that's just on the camera.
I was talking over it. That's where the bass went.
And so lowers the truss at the end of the con. It was a good rig, and it served us well. And the saddest part of the con, powering down the console at the end. We'll see you next year.
Going down. They both close, and then like this one would open, that one would open, and then like